Not every crime leaves fingerprints. Some are born in code. Welcome to TRUECRIME.exe, where fiction feels far too real.
Good evening. Tonight we're heading to Kilbrannagh, a quiet lochside town where 5 accidental drownings spanned 25 years. When reporter Mara Quinn follows a forgotten rescue ledger, the same names keep returning, pulling her toward the night Ailsa disappeared and the role her own father played. What starts as routine research unfolds into a slow, intimate reckoning with truth, guilt, and a confession the water couldn't keep. Before we begin, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? If you enjoy calm, thoughtful true crime, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps. All right, let's begin. Make yourselves comfortable.
The train left me in drizzle and peat-smoke. Kilbrannagh wasn't on most maps. Just a kink of grey rooftops around a loch black as old ink. The platform sign was flaking paint. The station master had the same look. I pulled my rucksack tight and tried to draw a clean breath. Even the rain smelled of something kept, bottled, moss and stone, and a secret. "Taxi?" the station master asked, as if he already knew I'd say no. "I'll walk," I said. He nodded at the loch. "Mind the bank. The stones are slick." I followed the single road, my boots sliding on slate, and past a church with a square tower and a pub with a stag on the signboard, the Red Hart. Beyond it, the water. Loch Brannagh lay flat even in rain, a dark pane without a ripple. A swallow skimmed it and was gone. I was here because of a story, and because of my father, though I wasn't telling anyone that. The room above the pub was narrow but clean. The woman behind the bar had strong arms, a black bob pinned behind one ear, and that soft Highland consonant I always wanted to fold up and keep. "Isla," she said, drying a glass. "You'll be Mara, the reporter?" "Podcaster," I said. But "Podcaster," she repeated, half amused. "Soup's on if you've sense to eat something warm." She slid a key across the bar. Brass, heavy, a stag etched on its head to match the sign. In Kilbrannagh, even keys had antlers. Upstairs, I laid out my kit. Small condenser microphone, spare batteries, a battered notebook with a crack down the spine, and a folder of photocopies and clippings, my father's handwriting on some of them. D.I. Lachlan Quinn, 30 years on the job, commendations, and an ability to speak about darkness without blinking. He'd been dead 7 years. I'd done my grieving. I told myself I had. I switched on the recorder and spoke into the quiet. "This is Mara Quinn. Brannagh is a town most of you have never heard of, but if you live here, you know the names. Ailsa Stewart, 17, disappeared August 1999, found 6 weeks later in Loch Brannagh, coroner, misadventure. Since then, the loch has taken 4 more. Colin Ray, 2006, Ewan Forbes, 2013, Morag Kerr, 2019, Hamish Black, last autumn. 5 drownings in 25 years, all ruled accidents. All tied, locals say, to that first summer. I'm here to see what the water remembers. My voice sounded steady. Good. I didn't add. My father signed off on 2 of those files. Kilbrannagh had 1 shop, 1 church, 2 bars, and a police station, in the back of a stone cottage with a blue door. The man behind the desk was broad and bearded, with kind eyes that looked like they'd be kinder if they were allowed. "Sergeant Ewan Macready," he said, offering his hand. "You'll be the last from the internet." "From Glasgow," I said, shaking it. "I talk into a mic. Some people listen." His smile was brief. "Some folk listen in ways we don't like." "I'm not here to stir trouble," I said. "I'm here to look at records the public's entitled to." "Those'll be with the council office," he said, which wasn't true, not entirely. He held my gaze long enough for us both to know it. "What is it you're after, exactly?" "The drownings," I said. "All of them. And the night Ailsa Stewart went missing." His mouth tightened at the name. "That one's older than me in a uniform. Old doesn't mean cold." "You'll find plenty of folk happy to talk," he said, "and plenty who won't. That's the truth of it." "Will you?" I asked. He glanced down at the desk. Papers gathered in a neat fan, a photo in a cheap frame, him in a football kit, a girl with a gap-toothed grin clinging to his side. Sister or daughter? Hard to say. The frame had a crack across one corner, glued but visible. "Off duty, I'll have a pint," he said. "On duty, I'll be careful what I say. That'll have to do you, Ms. Quinn." He pronounced the name without a flicker. It landed between us and stayed there. I walked the loch late that afternoon. Rain eased, leaving midges to float in mad constellations around my face. The path folded around pines and hooked past an old boathouse with a corrugated roof, patched in tar. The padlock was new. The wood was not. I put my ear to a seam and smelled damp rope, oil, and the ghost of something that had once been sweet. Lilies, or rot, that thought it was lilies. An elderly man in a green cap appeared from nowhere and nearly made me drop my recorder. "Bench," he said, pointing to a slab of stone. "You'll do your legs a kindness." "Thanks," I said, sitting. "You live near?" "Born here. Tam McVicker." His eyes were misty and sharp in the same way. He looked at the boathouse with undisguised dislike. "That's an ugly wee hut." "Ugly how?" "Doesn't belong," he said. "We built that after the Second War for the rescue boat. That boat didn't rescue much." "You were here in 99. I was here in 79 as well, but you'll have no interest in that." He dug in his pocket and brought out a boiled sweet, unwrapped. "You're after the girl, Ailsa Dot." "Yes." "Pretty thing. Smiled easy. Dealt the beer and didn't mind the old fellas. The last night anyone saw her, I was in the Red Hart. She took her break and went to the water. That's the story." "Whose story?" "The town's." He looked at me, head tipped. "You've your father's stare." My skin pulled tight. "You knew my father?" "Knew of him. The Glasgow man. He came up and he went away and left us with our loch." He slipped the sweet back into his pocket like a joke he didn't want to share. "You record, miss?" "I do," I said, "but I can keep some things off the tape." He nodded at the boathouse again. "There's a ledger in there. Rota for search nights. Boat checks. Petrol chits. Names. You want to see who turned out for the girl and who didn't. You'll find your pattern if you've hands to pry and nerve to read. Do you have the key?" His laugh was a cough. number, but keys are for folk that like to wait. Tam walked away with that particular Highland briskness that said, "I've told you enough." The rain came back. I walked to the pub and ordered soup. Isla set down a bowl the color of carrots and a hunk of bread that steamed when I broke it. The pub's windows were fogged, the talk low. A man at the end of the bar told a joke about a cow, and nobody laughed. Isla leaned on the counter with her forearms and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Everyone here looks like they've seen the same one," I said. "Tam says there's a ledger in the boathouse." "Aye," she said, "there's a ledger. You'll find the doors tight. You have the key." She didn't answer that. "If you're going to poke, don't poke alone." Is that advice or an offer? She thought about it for a long beat that felt like 2. "I close at 11, she said. We took a torch and a crowbar borrowed from behind Isla's locked utility door. The path was slick enough to skate on, and by the time we reached the boathouse, my hair was snake wet and plastered under my hood. "Hold the torch," Isla said. Her knuckles whitened as she wedged the bar under the padlock's hasp. The metal protested, then surrendered with a scream that made the lock shiver. Inside, the smell wrapped us like a bad blanket. The ledger was on a shelf above a coil of old rope, big, blue, nylon, nicked and stiff. The book's cover said BRANNAGH RESCUE 1972, in letters that once were gold. Isla held the torch while I turned pages. Handwriting changed with the years, but stayed exact. Dates, times, names. Beside some entries, a faint pencil tick, as if someone long ago had meant to come back and never did. "August," I said, 19th to 24th. "Here." I traced the lines. Search Party Rhoda. The names repeated: Colin Ray, Ewan Forbes, Morag Kerr, Hamish Black. Others too. Jamie McCabe, Seamus Boyd, Isla's own surname in a different hand. "Those 4 drowned later," Isla said softly, as if the boathouse would take offense at being told something it already knew. "Same 4 turned out every night," I said. "Others rotated. These 4 are constant." "Aye," Isla said. "Colin ran the scouts. Euan had the boat. Morag did everything. She couldn't sit still. Hamish lived for a chance to be useful." "And the night Ailsa went missing?" I turned back. August 20th, 1999. No Rhoda, just a scrawl of names and times like someone writing in a storm. I ran a finger down. Colin Ray, Ewan Forbes, Morag Kerr, Hamish Black, L. Quinn. My hand paused. I heard my own breath before I felt it. "Your da," Isla said, torchlight cutting the edges of her face into a strong geometry. "You didn't tell me." "He came up to consult," I said, which was neat, manageable. I didn't say he'd been assigned after another DI sprained a knee, and someone in Glasgow saw an opportunity to give Lachlan Quinn clean air. I didn't say I'd found his notes in a cardboard box after the funeral, and I hadn't stopped following the line since. "He was good at his job," Isla said carefully. "Folk said he was quick with answers." "Quick with closure," I said. "You've all the warmth of a daughter," she said, which might have been a joke. I turned the page. There were more names. S. Macready. I touched it. Sergeant Macready. "That's his da," Isla said. "Shona's brother. Ewan's uncle. He died 2 winters after. Who's Shona? Isla shifted the torch. Euan's mother. A white moth careened across the beam and hit the ledger, leaving a dust of wing. I closed the book gently, as if it were a living thing that could fold away from pain. Why didn't anyone ever join the dots? Isla's mouth tilted. Maybe they did. Maybe there was no picture to see. We put the ledger back and rehung the lock with a contortionist's optimism. Halfway to the pub, a flashlight found us. Euan stood on the path with his hands in his jacket pockets, light steady on our faces. "You'll have that door repaired," he said to Isla, as if it were a courtesy and not an instruction. "I'll have it on the list," she said, unruffled. His beam shifted to me. "Ms. Quinn, breaking and entering on your second night. You work fast." "There's a public interest exception," I said, because arguments were how I slept. "There's a cliff half a mile that way," he said, nodding. "Some of us sleep fine without falling off it." "Sergeant," Isla said with a warning I didn't understand. His light dipped. "Good night," he said, and stepped off the path as if the trees were his door. Back in the pub's kitchen, Isla set the kettle to boil without asking, and leaned on the oven while the steam fogged her fringe. "You're not the first to come nosing," she said. "Bloggers before you. A lad with a drone who nearly lost his fingers to Hamish's net. A woman from STV who thought she'd do a 6-parter and left after she talked to Morag's sister. What did the sister say?" "That grief should be left where it lives," Isla said. She was right, and I didn't listen then either. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She looked down at her hands, the knuckles nicked, a thin white scar across one thumb. "Because sometimes the only way to keep a thing is to let it go," she said, "and because I liked Ailsa." "You knew her well?" "She pulled pints for me when I had no money to pay her, and she laughed at my jokes when I had no jokes to tell." Isla poured the water. "And because Euan's good, and goodness can pull a man apart if he thinks he owes too much." "Owes who?" "Everyone," she said simply, like it was a truth the whole town understood. In the morning, the rain stopped and the sky opened in a pale apology. I went to the council office and asked for inquest reports. The woman at the desk looked over her glasses and said, "You'll want to fill out Form 17C," in a tone that meant, "Go away." I filled out 17C. She gave me a stack of photocopies anyway, like a woman who knew when resistance was more work than surrender. Back in my room, I laid them on the bed and worked through them with a pencil. The autopsies were clinical, relentless, drowning, water in lungs, minor abrasions, blood alcohol in 2, not in 2, manner of death, accidental, boxes ticked, neat signatures, 2 of them in a hand I knew from birthday cards, and once, a note by a kettle, "Remember to eat. L. Quinn." I set that page aside and kept going. What I wanted wasn't there. Sometimes what you want never is. It was in the margins I found it. Tiny, identical notations on 3 reports. Knot marks on wrists, consistent with prolonged handling of rope. Not ligature marks. Knot marks. Not unique, the pathologist wrote. Could be from rescue practice ropes or boating. Nobody followed it. I walked back to the loch with the rope in my head, At the boathouse, a shadow moved behind me. Euan. No flashlight this time, just his presence, like another tree. You look like you've decided to hate something, he said. Rope, I said. There were rope marks on 3 of them. The pathologist noted them. Nobody asked why. You'll be making the connections you came to make, he said, with the weariness of a man who'd read the end of every book first. My father signed one of those reports, I said. I felt the words before I heard them. Saying them in the open made the air ache. He wrote accidental. Maybe it was, Euan said. 5 times, I said. Folk drown all the time, he said. Lakes take folk. Loch BRANNAGH doesn't like to give them back. You don't believe that? He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I believe in weather and in stone, and in what folk do when they think nobody's watching. Then why are you saying it? Because you're here to pull bones out of the water and hold them up to the sun, he said quietly. And some of us have to go to the grocery after. He started to walk away. I called after him. Who was Ailsa to you? He stopped, not turning. A girl who didn't mind my da when he smoked at the bar and told bad stories, he said. A girl who deserved better than what she got. And what did she get? Wet, he said, and kept going. Tam found me again 2 days later on the church step, where I sat going over my father's notes until the letters blurred. You're reading ghosts, he said. They're poor company. What do you know? I asked, ready to barter warmth for information. No, there was a bonfire on the green that night, Tam said, settling beside me. Kirk Fair. Music, beer. Ailsa left the bar at 10:30. Last seen heading toward the loch. No Colin Ray walked her part of the way. He said he turned back at the fairy tree. Fairy tree? A hawthorn by the bend. Don't laugh. People toss ribbons on it. It does no harm to be tender with what you don't understand. I won't laugh. Good, he said. No Euan took the boat out at dawn and came back with nothing. No Morag posted flyers till her hands bled. No Hamish found a shoe, and it broke him. That's what I know. A shoe. Blue trainer, he said. Left. The right turned up 6 weeks after when she did. Where? By the outflow, he said. Where the Loch goes to be a river. There's a grate there. It catches things we'd rather not see. Why did you tell me about the ledger? I asked. Because I watched those 4 die again for 20 years, he said, eyes gone watery. They were good and bad like the rest of us, but they had something more in common than a rota. What? They knew the story wasn't true, he said. The town's story. He put his hand flat on the stone step. And they didn't know what to do with that. How do you know they knew? Morag told me, he said. A week before she went in. She said, Tam, I'm tired of keeping watch on a lie. She said there were 2 nights that summer, not 1. What does that mean? She wouldn't say, he said. Then she went for a walk and didn't come back. I called my producer in Glasgow and told him I needed a few more days. He sighed into the receiver, like a man paying out rope to someone who meant to drown herself with it. Just don't come back with a ghost story, Mara. I won't, I said. I'll come back with a ledger. That night, Isla closed early, and we sat in the back room with the radio, a murmur, and the pub dark. "You look like you're going to ask me for something," she said. "You and Ailsa," I said. "Were you close?" She smiled at her hands. "We were young," she said, "and nobody knew how to call it what it was. But yes, close." "Did she tell you anything about that night?" "She said she was tired of being everybody's sister," Isla said. "She said she wanted to be a secret." Then she laughed and called me daft and went back to the bar. I told her I'd walk her home, and she said no. She said if she couldn't walk 100 yards in her own town, what good was living in it? "Did you see her leave?" "I saw Colin meet her under the sign," she said. "I saw him talk with his hands like he always did. I saw him walk with her to the bend. I saw him turn back. I saw Euan smoke by the door and flick his butt at the gutter, like a man doing his bit for the sea. I saw Hamish wipe down his bar with that stupid striped cloth. I did not see what happened next." "Colin denied walking her all the way to the water," I said. "Colin denied a lot of things," she said. "He asked me to marry him once." "Did you?" "Say no," she said, "politely. We've a talent for politeness in this town. It's how we put a bow on a brick." "Morag," I said. "What was she keeping watch on?" Isla's eyes flickered. Morag was the strongest of us. She believed the truth could be scrubbed like a pan if you just used enough salt. She was wrong about that. What did she know? Isla looked at me for a long, long time, and then got up and went to a cupboard. She brought back a biscuit tin and set it between us. "I kept this because I keep things," she said. "It might be nothing. It might be worse." Inside, wrapped in a tea towel, was a cassette tape. Maxell 60. Someone had written August 99 on the label, in the tidy capital letters of a person who believed in systems. "Whose is it?" I asked. "Found it under the floorboards when I replaced them after the flood," she said. "I think it's the bars. The old CCTV system taped audio separate for some reason. I never had the heart to listen. Why give it to me?" She looked at my face like a person checking the weather before a long walk. "Because you keep asking," she said, "and because I can't stand not knowing which is worse, the story we tell or the one we don't." I had to buy a second-hand tape player from a man who sold obsolete technology like contraband. I took it to my room, closed the curtains even though it was noon, and pressed play. The tape hissed. The pub came alive in dust. Glasses, laughter, the rumble of voices, a jukebox clipping off the end of a song. People spoke in bursts. I made out words like stones underwater. Then a voice I knew anyway. "All right, lass," my father said, younger, softer, the Glasgow in him stronger. "You've done a shift and a half." "Nearly done," Ailsa said. The tape caught her smile and pressed it flat, but you could still hear the light. Then, I'm for my bed. "You folk to walk you?" he asked. "I'm fine, sir," she said, half mocking. "It's 100 yards. Euan'll see you past," he said to someone else, his voice lowering. "Would you, son?" "I'm on the till," Euan said, and the drawer chimed. "Hamish." "I'll do it," Colin said. "I'm that way anyway." Footsteps. The door groaned. The tape went quiet, save for the bar's mechanical heart. Then, my father again. Closer, as if he'd leaned over the counter. "Tell me again about the farmer's boy," he said. "The one you say's been at you." "It's nothing," Ailsa said. Discomfort hidden in brightness like a bruise under makeup. "He says things. That's all." "It's not all," my father said. The steel in his voice showed for a second. "Names." Silence. A glass set down. The tape wobbled and steadied. "Lachlan," another voice said. Low, female. "Isla's, younger." "Let it be." "I just want to know who to speak to," he said. "That's my job." "You're not on duty," she said. "I'm always on duty," he said. And then he laughed, a little. "Even when I don't want to be." The door went again. A draft. Then a voice in a half-whisper, unmistakable even 26 years on. "Sir," Colin said. "Sir, a word." Footsteps. The tape stuttered with proximity. A hand laid too close to the mic. "I walked her to the tree," Colin said, breathless. "Like I said, she told me not to fuss. That's all." "You sure?" my father said. "You're sweating like a liar." "I had a pint," Colin said, and tried to laugh. "It's hot as Hades in here." "Go home," my father said. "Sleep. If there's more, you tell me." Colin moved away on the tape. The pub breathed. Then, a door, again. The outside swallowed the room's sound for a second, and Ailsa's voice came from somewhere just beyond the threshold, bright, calling back in. "Night," she said. The door swung. The Loch swallowed her. The tape swallowed the Loch. There was a long stretch of nothing. Ice, clatter, laughter. Isla humming. A man swearing about darts. The chunter of the till. Then, very near the microphone as if he'd leaned into it, my father whispered to himself. Not for anyone else. "Don't go to the water, hen," he said. So soft I had to wind it back 3 times to be sure. "Not tonight." The tape ended with a click. I sat with it in my hands until the room was dusk again. The words themselves didn't indict anyone. They didn't acquit anyone either. They told me what I already knew, and what I didn't. My father had been in the bar, had cared enough to meddle, had assigned a man, had watched a girl cross a door. He had been close enough to say hen. He had not followed. I went downstairs with the tin under my arm and found Isla polishing glasses in the after-lunch quiet. "It's not a smoking gun," I said. "I didn't think it would be," she said, relief in her voice the way rain looks on stone. "There, whether you name it or not. Why put a mic on the bar?" "The previous owner had notions," she said. "Thieves, lawsuits, immortalizing his jokes. He never did catch anything but himself." "I'll keep it," I said, "if that's all right." "You'll give it back," she said, "if that's all right." I nodded. Euan came in at dusk like a man who wasn't sure if he was supposed to be somewhere else. He took a stool and nodded at Isla, and didn't look at me. "Pint," he said. "Of course," Isla said, drawing it slow. How's your mum? He swallowed. She's the same. And your sister? The same, he said. And the second same was a shield. You'll be at the Kirk Fair this weekend? He asked Isla, which was generous. Everyone was at the fair. I'll be slinging burgers at men who can't cook, she said. You'll be telling children not to fight. I'll be losing at the tombola, he said. Then, to me, sharp and flat, Ms. Quinn, what do you want? Truth, I said, because it sounded better than my father. He took a long drink and set the glass down. You think my town killed those folk, he said, one by one. You think your daw missed it or hid it. I think 4 people from the same rota dying is a pattern, I said. And patterns are stories that haven't been given words yet. Every pattern looks like a net if you're under it, he said. Careful, you don't tangle yourself. Is that a threat? It's a weather forecast, he said. Rain. Wind from the west. Bring a coat. He drained his pint and left. Isla watched the door swing shut. He's not your enemy. I don't think he is, I said. Good, she said, because if he were, you wouldn't know it until your lungs were full. The fair made the whole town smell of smoke and onions. Kids ran with plastic swords. A band on the green misplayed Caledonia with brave hearts. I walked the stalls and recorded the sound of coins landing in buckets, and a woman at the bake sale telling me how to make shortbread like a person delivering medicine. Tom found me at the edge of the water. Come, he said, not waiting for me to agree. We walked toward the outflow where the Loch found its narrow throat and tried to become a river. There was a grate, just as he'd said, a metal maw that looked like it would prefer bones to branches. There, he said, pointing with his stick. Lodged against the bars, gray with the sediment of years, was a knot, a loop within a loop, spit whipped and hard. Bowline, I said, surprising both of us. You sail? Tam asked. I had a father, I said, and wished I hadn't. Pick it, he said, or photograph it. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you that in this town, knots get tied and folk forget who made them. I photographed it. I wasn't ready to pull anything loose. On my way back over the green, Euan fell into step beside me. He carried a plastic bag with a goldfish in it, and looked like a man intending not to think about how he'd explain that to his cat. You'll walk with me, he said, not asking. We cut toward the church, past the fairy tree with its tatters of ribbon, past the boathouse. The air cooled. The Loch lay like a held breath. He stopped and put the bag down in the grass, with a tenderness that would have undone me if I'd been softer. I know who you are, he said. Not just the mic, the name period. Most folk can read, I said. I knew your da, he said, before I wore the uniform. He taught me to tie a bowline down there on the jetty, so I wouldn't look like a fool when the real Coast Guard came. He smiled without humor. He was good to me. Was he good to Ailsa? I asked. He looked past me, his jaw tightening. He tried, he said. Sometimes trying's 2 steps and a door. What are you telling me, Euan? He knelt and lowered the bag to the lock water, letting it equalize. I'm telling you that you're not the only one who lost something you never had, he said, and that what you want from this might not be what you need. And what do I need? To leave it be, he said. To let folk who live here carry what they've been carrying without your hands on the rope. Isla said you owe too much, I said. He flinched, barely. She'd know, he said. Then he stood and tipped the fish into the loch. It flashed once and disappeared like a coin tossed to a god with a habit of not answering. Why the goldfish? I asked. It was that. Or a coconut, he said. Go home, Miss Quinn. I will, I said, when I've heard the end. You won't like it, he said. I don't like any of it, I said. We stood there with the loch between us like a table neither of us could bring ourselves to sit at. 2 nights, I said finally. What did Morag mean? Euan's face closed. You talk to too many old men, he said. Tell me. He turned and walked away. Then he stopped, just once, and said over his shoulder, There was the night she went missing, and there was the night we all agreed what had happened. They were not the same night. It was Isla who told me the rest, because she was tired, and because holding a door doesn't get easier if you stare at it long enough. They found Ailsa's right shoe by the outflow, she said, a pot of stew bubbling slowly on the stove, like a clock that had given up telling you anything useful. They found her body 6 weeks later. She had water in her lungs. The coroner said she'd slipped. Folk nodded. It made everything quiet. But it wasn't like that, I said. It wasn't not like that, she said. She did go into the water, but not alone. Who with? Isla's eyes filled and didn't spill. Colin, she said, the name landing heavy. He loved her in the way boys love girls they don't understand. He'd had a drink and an idea he wouldn't let go, and he thought the loch would make him strong. He kissed her and she said no, and he kept hold. He didn't mean to push. He didn't mean nothing at all. That's the worst of it. Who told you? Morag, she said. She was there. She and Euan and Hamish and 2 more. They dragged her out, and they tried to breathe the water out of her, and they failed. They panicked. They made a plan. They told the town she'd gone alone. They told themselves the same thing until they believed it. And my father. He came after, Isla said. He heard rumor, and he dug, and he scared the truth out of a boy who thought he was a man. Then he looked at this place and the people in it, and he made a choice. What choice? To call it misadventure, she said. To keep a town from tearing itself apart. To keep a boy from prison, who would break there and become something nobody could live with after. To spare a mother who'd already lost a daughter. He wrote accidental, I said. The word was a pebble in my mouth. He wrote what he wrote, Isla said, and Euan hated him for it. Euan, he's been putting folk in the loch ever since, she said, and the room tilted. I heard myself say, No. Colin first, Isla said, then Euan, the other Euan, not our Euan. She shook her head. God, the names. Then Morag, when she told him she couldn't keep it anymore. Then Hamish, who drank himself brave and tried to tell me. Euan's done it clean and quiet and kind as you can do a thing like that. Rope and a gentle hand. He sends them in, and he makes sure they don't come back. I sat down, because standing wasn't something my body remembered how to do. How do you know? Because he told me, she said, and I could see Euan in the telling, standing in this kitchen, his hand on the doorframe as if the wood could hold him up. He asked me to forgive him. I said I wouldn't. I said I couldn't. He said he didn't expect me to. Why tell me now? Because I think he'll tell you himself, she said, and because I don't know what you'll do to him when he does. He asked me to meet him at the jetty. Midnight. The loch had the sheen of something sharpened. The boathouse hulked. The fairy tree clacked its dry leaves like teeth. Euan stood with his hands in his pockets and looked like the loneliest man who'd ever lived. You know, he said, not a question. I know what Isla knows, I said. I know what Tam thinks. I know what the ledger remembers. I know my father wrote accidental and called it mercy. And what do you call it? Cowardice, I said. The word surprised us both. He nodded once, as if an argument he'd been having with himself had found its end. He came to our house, he said quietly. He took my hand and taught me knots, and he brought my sister a book, and he left. He did his job, and he went back to Glasgow to the life where you existed, and we didn't. He left us to hold a thing that was too big. I didn't know, I said, and the tinny inadequacy of it made me want to sink into the floor. No, he said. How would you? He took something from his pocket, and for a second I thought it was a rope. It was a cassette tape, like the one Isla had given me. Eug 99 written in the same careful hand. What is that? I asked. The other night, he said. The one nobody hears. After they found her. After a week. After they'd all made a plan, because plans are what folk do when grief is a room they can't get out of. Your da came to the boathouse and turned on the tape because he turned everything on. He wanted a record. He wanted the truth to exist somewhere, even if he buried it. He didn't know that wanting is not the same as doing. He held the tape like a relic. You'll hear him talk to Colin, he said. You'll hear Colin cry like a wee boy, and say he didn't mean it, and say he didn't mean it, until he meant nothing else. You'll hear my uncle say we'll fix it. You'll hear me breathe, because I was in the corner like a ghost. And you'll hear your da say we'll call it misadventure, and my mother say please, and Morag say no, and then say nothing at all. Why give it to me? Because I'm done, he said simply. Because I've done a thing for every year since, and the loch is full of my penance, and it hasn't brought her back. Because I hate your da, and I loved him, and I don't know how to carry both anymore. Because you're his, and you're not, and that seems like a place to put this that isn't the water. I stepped closer. The boards creaked. Euan, I said. It wasn't a question or a plea. It was just his name in the open air. He looked at me then, really looked, and something like a smile touched his mouth and fled. Do you know who Ailsa was to your da? He asked, the words brittle. No, I said. And then the ground fell away because of course I did. My father, the bar, the tenderness of hen. She was his, Euan said, as if setting down a weight he'd carried in his teeth. He came back up here for training one spring, and he made a mess like men make, and then he left. And my mother never told him because she had a husband and a boy, and a town. He found out that summer, and he came, and he tried to be what he thought a father was for 6 weeks. Then he chose his other life, and he called it duty. I couldn't feel my hands. "You're her sister," he said gently, almost kindly. "Half. That's the truth you came for, and didn't know you were asking for." The loch made a sound, a lap at the boards, like an animal shifting in sleep. "I killed Colin," he said then, conversational, like a man explaining a recipe. He was going to do for himself anyway. I did it softer. I told him we'd go out and lay a wreath where she went in, and he let me tie the knot. I told him it was to keep him safe. It was. I killed Morag when she told me she'd tell you. I waited for her at the bend, and I asked her to forgive me, and she touched my face, and then we both cried, and then she was quiet. Hamish I took from behind the bar when he was drunk enough to want it. I told him the water was a kind of absolution. It wasn't. It was wet. "You're telling me because you want me to—" "What?" I asked. "Arrest you? I'm not police. Forgive you? I don't—" "I'm telling you because I'm finished, and because I don't know what it means to go on," he said, "and because there's one more thing I have to do." He stepped past me. The boards complained. He walked to the edge and took a rope from a cleat. It was the big blue kind from the boathouse. Stiff, familiar. He threw one end into the water and tied the other into a bowline around his waist, like a man who knew what he was doing. "No," I said, and the word broke. "It's not for me," he said. "It's for you." He handed me the loose coil. My hands took it without asking me. "You'll pull me back," he said. "When my lungs are full, you'll learn how it feels. You'll keep me alive, and you'll know you kept me alive. And you'll carry that instead of your Dawes boxes. And then you'll go home and tell your story. And I'll sit where I sit, and every time I walk past this water, I'll know you chose to let me live with it." "Euan," I said. But he was already stepping off the jetty, like a man stepping into a church. The water took him. The rope paid out sharp, bit my hands, burned skin. He went under. I hauled. The rope sliced and I tasted metal. He fought for nothing. He let me work. The knot held. He surfaced vomiting black, and I dragged him in like a catch, and we lay on the boards in the rain, gasping like fish. He rolled to his side and coughed until the night was full of it. Then he laughed, a terrible sound that had nothing to do with humor. "That," he said, his voice raw, "is what it is." I wanted to hit him. I wanted to hold him until he stopped shaking. I did neither. I pulled the rope free of him and hurled it into the boathouse, where it landed on the ledger's shelf, with a thud like a book closing. "You'll come with me now," I said. "You'll tell this in a room with lights that don't flicker, and someone to type it down." "I will," he said. "But to who? My constable? Your producer? Your mother? The kirk? The loch?" "To me," I said. "And then to whoever is after me." He sat up, put his face in his wet hands, and then took them away. "All right," he said. "All right." We walked to the station house like people leaving a funeral and failing to remember which of us was dead. I didn't sleep. I wrote. I recorded an episode that wasn't an episode. I said my father's name and Isla's and Euan's. I said Ailsa until it stopped being a sound and became a place. The next morning, I took the tape to the police. Not Euan's station, Inverness. I played it for a woman with a pen that clicked like a metronome. I said the words Euan had said to me, and I did not make them pretty. She listened. She filled pages. She took the cassette like a midwife takes a child. They arrested Euan in the afternoon. He didn't resist. He asked me to bring Isla his mother's keys. He said, if there was a funeral for his life, would I please not go? I didn't answer. I couldn't. He kept looking at my face as if it would tell him something. Tam sat on the church step and watched the van drive away. He did not wave. Isla washed the bar until the wood was pale. I took the train back to Glasgow with the ledger's images on my phone and the marks from the rope on my hands like a pilgrim's. Back in my flat, I put my father's box on the table and opened it. On top was a photo I hadn't noticed before, or hadn't wanted to see. My father at a loch. A girl beside him, dark hair, eyes like mischief. He had his hand on her head, as if by doing so he could keep her from becoming a story. On the back, in his careful hand, Ailsa, August. And under that, in a different pen, a later pen, a hand that had finally learned how to wobble. Forgive me. I lay the photo down and stared at the ceiling until my eyes ached. Then I stood, went to the sink, and ran cold water over my hands. The marks stung, then throbbed. I let them. When the episode went out, I didn't do the sound design I usually did. I didn't add rain or loch or gulls. I let my voice carry and fail where it needed to. I said the names in order. Ailsa Stewart, Colin Ray, Ewan Forbes, Morag Kerr, Hamish Black. I said Lachlan Quinn last, not as a warning, but as a confession. I told the story, and I left spaces where the town had left spaces, and I said what Euan had asked me to say, that none of it had made anything better, that everyone had meant to be kind, that kindness is a poor map for a place like this. After, I went to my mother's house and told her about the other daughter he had for 6 weeks, the sister I didn't get, and now would never. She listened and held my face in her hands and said, he was complicated, like she was describing furniture she'd lived with for years. Me too, I said. On my way home, I stopped at a hardware shop and bought a length of rope. I cut it apart in the kitchen with a knife that jumped and nicked me. I tied and untied bowlines until my fingers remembered, and then forgot, and then remembered again. I made one perfect knot, set it on the table, and looked at it. The rope didn't answer. It never does. Weeks later, Isla sent a package. Inside, wrapped in the tea towel I recognized, was the brass key with the stag. For when you come back, she'd written on a postcard of the kirk in sunshine. We keep rooms for folk that go away. The last thing in the envelope was a photo of the fairy tree at the bend, stripped of ribbons by wind. Someone had tied a single blue shoelace to a branch, looped it once, twice, and then made a knot even my hands could name without thinking. A bowline, the rescue knot, the one that won't slip, the one you give to someone you mean to save.
Case closed. Archived in the synthetic vault. If you dare to return, the next file awaits. TRUECRIME.exe. The line between fiction and fear.